Well, I thought I'd take an opportunity before we move too far along here to kind of go over all the little stuff that we skipped over because it was repetitive. But I think it makes sense to go over, at least in theory, what we've come to at this point. All of our floor supports here, you can see it, there's tape on them, and that tape is, about 1.5 inches there going up the sides, right? And when I put that on, use the epoxy, do it the same way that we did on the outside of the boat, right? First we did a fillet, and we sanded it and scuffed it, and then we put the tape on there, and then we feathered in all the edges. Exact same thing. The only difference is make sure that you keep the scupper holes free and clear. And before you do that, all these should be sanded down, and then take clear epoxy and paint it on the entire thing, right? So that way there you're sealing the wood. Now I've done some sanding on this, but still a good amount of it is already sealed. I'll go back and seal it again before all is said and done. All right, and then you're just gonna want to sand and feather all this in. Again, same way that we did on the other side. It's a lot of the tasks that we're going to do throughout the boat, they're all repetitive. They're just different circumstances for one or the other. All right, so I thought that I would, before we wrap up doing fillets and putting glass on, I thought that I would show you the fillet down here, one more fillet, one more time. The reason for that is, in case some of you get all kind of jammed up as to how do you get in there, how do you, do a fillet upside down. All I did is using the jig or the support system that we have for the boat, flipped it up and threw a C-clamp down there. And that I put it on both straps, and that keeps it from sliding back down on me. All right, so now I can work real easy doing a fillet. It's not gonna run all over the place on me. I've already, because we're doing things out of sequence here, and that's pretty typical around the boat shop, you do what you can when you can. I've already put some glass up here on the top, tape, and now I'm going to put my fillet under here. So when I did that, epoxy ran down, some of it ran underneath. So you need to make sure that you go underneath there, sand all that out now. So, you want to have a nice smooth finish underneath there, and you want to scuff up a little bit so that we can do our fillet the same way that we were doing it everywhere else, all right? So now I'm just going to mix up some epoxy. And again, it's the consistency of about yogurt. The thing with a fillet is the thicker you make it, the easier it is to apply, the more difficult it is to get a nice smooth finish. The thinner you make it, the more difficult it is to apply because it's going to want to run. But if you do it and you do it right, you get a really smooth finish. And really just a simple thumb sanding will get you down the way you need to be. So you kind of need to be somewhere in between. I call that the yogurt, So you want to get it right around a yogurt consistency. And on a hot day like today, and it is hot, it'll start to set up pretty quickly. So, I'll run the fillet in there with the syringe. I'll start going back and forth with the spoon. And after probably 20-25 minutes, it'll start to set up enough so that I don't have to keep checking it and running it with the spoon. Once it does start to set, leave it alone. Get the spoon out of there, because then the spoon will actually start to grab it, and you'll make more trouble for yourself. That's why. So the key here is to remember, the goal of what it is that you're trying to do. So the first pass, once you get it down in there, you're just kind of moving it around, getting it from one end to the other. And it'll probably be really thick when you're doing that. And then you just keep making successive passes, pushing it from one end to the other until you get a nice even fillet. Now, a fillet is not, it's not like Bondo where you're filling a hole in a car or something to that effect. A fillet is a really specific thing, and it's not something that is specific to boat building. Fillet simply means rounding over the inside corner, right? And, it's a term that we use in CAD. It's a term that we use in a number of things. And the idea here is, two reasons that we're doing fillets where we join pieces of wood like this. First off, we want to make sure water never, ever, ever, ever gets in between this piece of wood and this boat, because when it does, it never results in happy things, especially if you're in the Northeast or Northwest or Northern Midwest where it gets cold and it gets warm because water gets in, it freezes, what happens? It expands. And all that's going to do is push this away. Second thing that we're doing the fillet for is so that when we put fiberglass underneath here, fiberglass tape, it has a nice round corner that the fiberglass can go right up. And, you know, using your gloved hand, after you know, the way we did the fiberglass before, the tape, we rolled it out, we got it nice and wet, and then we brought it over to the boat, and then just using your gloved hand, you'll push it right into that fillet, and it'll be perfect. Yeah, that's how you do a perfect fillet. Okay, so I'm going to let this set for a few minutes, and while it sets, I'm going to bring you over and show you how we glued up that seat in the front. And then we'll come back and we'll give this one more check before we let it alone for the day. All right, the last time that we were gathering talking about this seat, I believe we had made some marks across here called registration marks so that when we put it all back together, we'd know where everything went. So we took those pieces off that we had hot glued to the two sides. But before we did that, we made a little jig here. And I'm gonna have to take these off. So we're gonna do this in the reverse of actually how we put it together. So with these here, essentially all you're doing is you're holding the pieces in place and you're keeping everything level. So this piece is level with this piece, which is level with this piece, right? And in order to do that, all I did was rip a 2x4 down in half and screw it right to the bench top. And before I did that, I put cellophane packing tape on there. Now, again, that's to keep this from getting glued to this, right? And I actually had 3 of them going across here. I've taken one out. All right, just take this one out and I can show you how we did the rest. All right. Well, we dry fit the whole thing before we got started, and I screwed a piece in here, a piece in here, and a piece in here, and that kept them from sliding this way. And then earlier today I took them out, but I had a small piece here and a small piece here. Looks like we cleaned them up and threw them away, but it was to hold them together this way. All right, so I only put one side in because the other side we're going to push in. And then the last thing I did was cellophane tape on the bottom of the 2x4s going across them all, holding everything down. So it keeps it from going this way. I was able to push them all together, put one screw block here, and we glued it up. And that's how you glue up in a regular shape. And through the miracle of epoxy, again, clamping doesn't have to be like yellow glue where you're cranking it down or using really, really heavy clamping, because the epoxy does most of the work for you. It just needs to be firm contact between each board. All right, so now I've got a solid piece of wood here. That's a beautiful thing. So I'm going to sand this down, you know, lightly, get rid of all the stuff that came up to the top. And again, as you're gluing, I keep telling you, with epoxy, always, 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 always clean up as you go, because you're going to be much happier in the long run that way. A lot easier to clean it up when it's wet than to sand it up. All right, so I am going to, in fact, sand this up. And then what I've decided that I'm going to do, yeah, I think it's going to be plenty strong because I'm going to have struts going across here before it goes into the boat on the underside. But I think what I will do is, after I make my cuts here, I will put fiberglass cloth along the bottom of it, just to give it a little bit of extra strength. Okay, well, that's it. That's what I wanted to show you. That's how we do a glue up of in a regular shape. And then we're getting close to getting ready to fit this back into the boat.